Welcome, everybody. Just opened up the doors here. Folks will be streaming in. My name is Lisa Hill. I work here at Infobase, Vault Firsthand, and we're thrilled today to be doing another webinar with Adam Smith. This on the topic of upskilling and reskilling, developing and advancing your workforce through lifelong learning and professional development. As folks are just logging in now, we'll kind of slowly get started. The GoToWebinar module is a little bit, I'll say, clunky, in that you have to look for, if you want to ask questions, and we do love interactions and questions and comments from the audience, you're going to need to look in your GoToWebinar module for a little question mark or the word questions, and go ahead and type in your question there. So just to make sure you guys know what I'm talking about, if you could put the name of the city or town or state or country you're calling in from, name of your school, name of your institution, whatever, that would be great. And that will indicate to us and to Adam that you guys know where to make comments, where to ask questions as we go. I'm located just north of Boston today, where it's a lovely actually it's not that lovely, it's kind of hot out. But it's sunny, so I guess that's something. Let's see, we got a little question here. Wisconsin is here. Excellent. Massachusetts is here. Again, that's me as well. New Jersey. Welcome, New Jersey. And just go ahead and put that into the chat there. This isn't necessary. It's not a crucial part, but I just want to make sure everybody knows where to ask the questions. And there's New York, Utica. Hello, Utica. Texas. All right, great. So without further ado, I just want to, before I introduce Adam to get kicked off, I do want to say a little bit about who we are here at Vault Firsthand. It's a career building platform, a career intelligence platform, hoping to engage job seekers, students, and professionals to find the right career path using the power of firsthand experiences. Without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to Adam. And Adam, please take it away.
Thank you, Lisa. Appreciate everybody making the time. Know these are busy, busy times of year for all of us who do work in K-12 higher ed. And I think it's kind of busy for everybody, right? So, so really appreciate y'all making space, taking the time. Please know that everyone who is here will automatically get the recording of today, so feel free to share that. And if you know folks who have registered to attend live, they'll also get the recording if they couldn't be here. Want to thank our partners at Infobase. They always provide some amazing opportunities for thought leaders from around the country to unpack and talk about topics. Also want to thank y'all. I think the interesting thing is we always get the list of people who register, and we're always adding more people, but I always see some of the same names. So really appreciate you all continuing to say, as we say with students, you know, you vote with your feet. You being here is telling us that the conversations we're having are timely, relevant, and we're making the kind of space that's important. So thank y'all for doing that. And also thank our panelists, and I'll have them introduce themselves in a moment. Before we get started, I want to quickly give us time to kind of just settle in. Know it's a busy day, no matter where you are in the country and in the world. A whole bunch of life has happened since you opened your eyes and rolled out of bed. So if you could just kind of take a couple deep breaths, and I want to quickly go through an acknowledgement and a level set for us, and then we'll get started. We acknowledge the land on which we sit and occupy today as the traditional and ancestral homes of the indigenous peoples and nations. I acknowledge my roots on the stolen land of the Dakota and Ojibwe in Minnesota, and my current residence on the land of the Shawnee and Osage peoples in Kentucky. Please take a moment if you can, and in the question box, type the name of the peoples whose land you currently reside on. Without them, we would not have access to this gathering and to this dialogue. We take this opportunity to thank and honor the original caretakers of the land. We also honor our ancestors and the narratives of the people and their knowledge who have empowered us to be in community today. Click, Lisa. There you go. All right. Thank you all so much for taking the time to do that and for acknowledging the place and the space and the land in which we reside. Land back is not just something people see, just like reparations are not things that just repair. Land back is a whole movement and a thing that we do every single day. Also want to acknowledge just the season that we're in. You know, racialized trauma, gender trauma, people not having the ability to make decisions about their own life choices, reproductive choices, all of those things. And those are infusing our brain and sticking in us like smoke at a nightclub. And so we want to kind of create this opportunity to kind of wash some of that smoke out, but also acknowledge that everyone who's in this space is caring, but also carrying a bunch of stuff that you're bringing here today. So I want to thank you for doing that. Again, I'm Adam Smith, do a lot of higher education and K-12 work. Right now, living in Lexington, Kentucky. My work is centered on building coalitions, reframing institutions to better serve the students that live there, and to support them in very intrusive, holistic, swaddling ways. And I run a firm called Adam Smith and Associates. My contact information is there. I'll turn it over to our panelists, Katie Schrader. So Miss Katie, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, hello everyone. Good afternoon, folks. My name is Katie Schrader. I am the Pathway Director Development Lead at Tech Elevator. What that means is I work with our Pathway team, which is our career development and coaching team at our boot camp. We are a software development boot camp, so we work with students either on a 14-week or a 30-week range in educating folks and turning them from Uber drivers, pediatricians, firefighters into software developers. So my work started in higher education, actually started alongside Adam, which is how I was able to meet Adam. And I went through a couple, I worked with a couple organizations, University of Akron, Cleveland State, and then Oberlin College. And then I moved into the tech sector, specifically with Tech Elevator. So it's good to meet everyone. My contact information is at the bottom. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions, and you can find me on LinkedIn at Katie Schrader.
That's great. Thank you, Katie. One of the things that's really important that we're talking about, and one of the reasons Katie is here among many other skill sets she has, is this concept of upskilling and reskilling. So we're really going to pour into that today, and professional development and how different generations view it, right? Because we are in a competitive market. I call this a buyer's market in hiring, right? The buyers control it all. And how do we use professional development to not just recruit people, but to retain them through upskilling and then even reskilling, knowing industries change. So thank you so much. Laurent Collier, sir.
Hey everyone, great to meet you. Great to be in the space today. My name's Laurent, and I'm currently working at the University of Kentucky doing professional development work with our advisor community here. I thought the best use of this introduction would be to kind of give you a context of the perspective I'm bringing into this conversation. I'm going into my 10th or 11th year working in higher ed, and I've been at 4 different institutions. I worked at Eastern Kentucky University and Georgetown, working in residence life, and then I worked with honor students at Miami University in Ohio, and I've worked with advising community and transformative learning, which is a student support service here on campus. And I'm really excited to talk about today's topics because all the 4 institutions that I've been at, 2 of the biggest things when you talk about the people that work there and their job happiness is, do they have the ability to do their job? Like, are they trained right? Do they have enough time to do their job? And then are they growing? Are they, whether that's growing towards a promotion within their company, whether it's gaining new skills to help them when they move on. So this is really an important topic when we start to think about that.
Thanks, Laurent. Appreciate it. And then we have Ms. Isaac. So Kirsten, can you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kirsten Isaac. I am a part of a company, a nonprofit called Monarch. So I'm a professional healthcare recruiter, and what that essentially means is I recruit for a mental health space for those individuals that have intellectual and developmental disabilities. And then on the flip side is that mental health side. So I recruit the therapist and other licensed or credentialed roles. I have 6 years of experience straight out of college. I went into human resources. I've been operating in that space since 2016. I met Adam at the University of Akron as well, same as Katie, and I was actually one of his student assistants. So I ran the front desk, and that was the highlight of me being a student at Akron. So I am very excited to talk to you all about recruitment and how you can retain employees, and also that professional development side. So it's a pleasure to meet you all.
Love it. Thank you so much. Y'all make me feel old now. Oh yeah, I met Adam when I was 12. I mean, see, you all get old, I stay the same. Katie, did you know that? I'm exactly the same. Go ahead.
No, just joking. It's you are exactly the same though. That's not a joke though. You're the same Adam I met I don't know how many years ago, and I don't want to age you.
Yeah, don't, please. I'm an old pawpaw. So everybody, our panelists are here. We want to make this as interactive as possible. So please throw your questions. As Lisa said, GoToWebinar isn't super intuitive based on some of the other platforms used for these kind of things. So chat, if you see that, you probably don't. That's for us. Questions is for you. So please throw any questions in there, any comments, any amens, any boos, I don't agree, that kind of stuff. Really important, okay? Because we have questions, we have things we're going to talk about. We want this to make this about you. This is your time. So that's important to us. One of the things I was really mindful of is how is the panelists we had today. Some of us Gen Xers on here. Do I have any Gen Xers, right? When I started at my current position, I started in a Zoom meeting, and one of my colleagues, now a really good friend of mine, had an 8-ball jacket hanging behind him on a coat rack. And I was like, bro, is that an 8-ball jacket? Katie, you don't even know what this is. 8-ball jacket is the jacket Salt and Pepper wore in the Push It video. Everybody wanted an 8-ball jacket in the 80s, right? So the Gen Xers are now, we're kind of executives now in higher ed. So it's a really different culture, but how we look at professional development and training is really, really, really different from young professionals. And the reality is folks aren't recruiting us and retaining us. We're recruiting millennials, Gen Zs, Gen Ys, Gen Nows. Now at some point, these post-war students will start going into the professional world. And so one of the reasons I wanted younger professionals on here from the standpoint of the work they currently do with centers in this space, but also that generational difference on how they approach professional development. So LaRon, I want to kick off with that question, right? Is how does a culture, and you kind of talked about this, but I'm going to kind of have all three of y'all answer this, and this is just from your own personal, not from your work, but how does a culture of investment in professional development, in upskilling, in from a variety of ways, mentoring, how does that increase morale for team members? How has that increased morale for you in position at institutions or organizations? And how has that helped to retain you? If there's a culture that is one that is constantly pouring into you, almost in a disruptive way. Look, you're gonna get trained, you're gonna learn this new stuff. Talk about that for a minute, LaRon, and then we'll have Katie and Kirsten do the same.
Yeah, so for me, I think what's really important is that each person and each individual are approaching, like when they come to work, they have different expectations, but everybody has the same expectation of the ability to kind of what I've talked about earlier, be trained to do their job well, and then have the ability to grow. So at the 4 different institutions that I've been at, there's been different levels of that. I think the first thing, for people in the room that are supervisors and that are executives, you know, looking at an employee's case management and workload, and do they have the time? You know, that's part of the culture. Do I feel like when I come into work every day that I have so much to do, like these, like, oh, I got to get this done, then I got to get this done. And then they're pulling me over here, and then I have to do this. If I can't focus on projects, or if I can't focus on my students or like the main goal, then I think that starts to impact the culture. So that's the first, and some places can manage that better than others. When I worked at Georgetown College, it's a small liberal arts school in Kentucky. And for those of you, if we have any that are at small schools, you're probably pretty familiar. When you're at a small school, you're wearing 1,000 different hats, and on any given day, you're going to be asked to do anything. And it makes it hard to focus, to make it feel like you can come in and do impactful work on each given day. So I would start with saying that, like, that is the most important. And then moving beyond that, for leadership, when we talk about how we include our team, from my transition from being an entry-level employee to kind of moving up and working in a leadership position at Georgetown, and then resetting after that, it was, you know, during my time at EKU when I first got started, I think the culture there, it wasn't what it needed to be in that first 2 years. And during my time, and I've been through a couple of different reorgs, but while I was at EKU, there was a complete reorganization and restructure of student success. And so all of the AVPs, kind of their position was recreated. And part of what I saw there is our group of kind of entry-level positions was the residence hall coordinator position. We didn't feel as supported as we needed to be. We didn't feel like our voice was heard in certain meetings when decisions were being made, and we didn't feel like we were, you know, yeah, we got our, you get to pick one conference that's local that you can go to, but when we think beyond that, of how am I being developed on a daily basis, that really wasn't happening. How are we empowered to make decisions? And so when that restructure happened and new leadership came in, some of the things that were really helpful for that experience was, we had committees created that all of the residence hall coordinators were put on, that were in charge of putting together the training that happened for the resident assistants. You know, it was a committee. Before that, it was the area coordinators that was kind of putting all that together. But then afterwards, they kind of reorged it, and they empowered everyone else to be a part of that decision. So part of it was, you know what, I get to pick. There was 4 different committees. You express what you're interested in, and then we'll let you sit on that. Now, ultimately, for leadership, they still have the ability to come in and say, well, this is the direction that we need to go, or these are the things that need to get done. But what happens, you build that culture of, hey, we're including you. We want to develop you so that when you're in those positions, you can recall on experience, yeah, I sat on this committee, I helped make, you know, departmental level decisions on this committee. This is what we did. And so that type of culture, including, helped with that job satisfaction, helps me retain. And it's funny because I think and I don't know, in the mind of some people in leadership, the mind is like, oh, well, we want our people to stay. So we don't want to, like, you know, push them out too hard. But, you know, when new leadership came, it was cycling in, okay, what's your next step? How do we get you to your next thing? And that level of care that you pour in, it makes you want to stay. Like, man, y'all care about me this much to help me grow. Well, how can I grow and how can I stay here? When it happens on the flip, and when people aren't getting what they need, I know when I was there my first years, I was just thinking, I gotta, you know, I'm gonna be here for 3 years. I'm gonna get my master's part, and then I'm out of here. As soon as I get what I need from them, then I'm leaving, because I didn't feel appreciated and valued. But then when that switched, even when I did leave, the door was always open. It's like, man, I'm probably gonna come back here because I loved being here. I felt supported here. So that might be rambling, but I think that kind of starts to talk about how culture and good culture can impact that retention and satisfaction while you're there.
No, it really does. And you're not going to EKU, Laurent. Just know, okay? Because I'm gonna just keep pouring in, bro. You can go nowhere. So I think one of the things that you're saying, and this is where this generational collide comes in, whether you work in K-12 education space or higher ed, or you're in a corporate space, younger professionals see development not just as, I'm going to a conference and I get to go kick it in San Diego. That's the Gen Xers, because we work ourselves to death and then we go to a conference and lose our minds, right? That's us. For them, it's little things. It's, Laurent, what do you think? It's, hey, I have this idea. Oh, let's amplify that. Let's do it. It's taking time as a leader, a supervisor, whatever it is, to constantly build in the month to sit down with Laurent or Katie or Kirsten and say, let's have a cup of coffee. See, what people then are hearing is, I'm important. Because for them, it isn't about the money first. It's about the wellness and the happiness and the meaning. And if I don't matter here, then I can just go somewhere else. And right now, I mean, we're all competing with, bars that are paying people $1,000 a week to schlep drinks. I mean, those are the realities. And so that's our competitive advantage, is that we can pour into people in a very robust, proactive way, which is very different from giving somebody training and then say, well, Katie, let me know if you need any help. If you have any questions, well, I don't know what questions I would have, right? It's a very different mindset. Kirsten, talk a little bit about that yourself. Talk about how having that culture of training and upskilling and pouring into team members, how that has increased your morale in certain roles, right? When you've been challenged. And other times it hasn't retained you. It's led to your attrition and you've left positions. And can you talk a little bit about how now you're on the other side, you're helping to recruit professionals? How much is that something that folks are looking for, right, in coming to work for your organization?
Sure. So I think that the biggest thing is for personal reasons. That professional development wasn't always important for me. So when I first got out of college, I was like, I'm making a paycheck and I'm going home. And I think that it was just the furthest thing from my mind. But really looking back at it and taking that first human resources role right out of college, and I had an amazing manager that said, hey, I'm going to tell you something that is you're going to keep this on your mind for the rest of your professional career, and that is professional development is going to make you want to stay at a job that you have. And she said, if you do not have professional development, you are not going to be happy. And so I did a lot of research on what professional development was first, because it can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people, and then what it meant for me. And so, I took that from what my vice president of HR told me, and I did my research, and it was where I started asking questions in interviews for my next role. Hey, if I'm interested in moving to talent acquisitions, or if I'm interested in moving to sales, do I have the opportunity to sit with these managers and really see if this is something that I'm interested in, or even just get an idea of another part of the business for my own development, to know, who I'm recruiting for, or who I am, who my internal customers are. And then also asking, when are one-on-ones? Do we have one-on-ones? Are they bi-weekly? Are they weekly? Are they monthly? Because that is going to help me prepare. Okay, so these are the things that aren't working for me in my role. Or these are the things that, hey, I have a suggestion. Can we just, alter this phone interview or phone screen template, just because it's easier for the roles that we recruit for. And so, in hindsight, I really think that professional development, one, makes you more confident in your role that you're doing, because you know exactly, what your manager's looking for, your internal customers, what they're looking for. And those are the things that you really need, and the tools that you need to be successful in your role. I think the other thing, the flip side of that, is it helps with efficiency. It helps with you feeling energized when you're coming to work, because again, you have those tools as a professional, and you have the ability to do your job. As far as my candidates, I think that the biggest thing, because I recruit for therapists, and so they are associates, so they're not fully licensed therapists. Some of them, they're straight out of school, just got their license, and they're looking for somebody, hey, would you be able to sign, once I get these particular hours, would you be able to sign and say that I'm a fully licensed therapist? And those are the things that, you know, my candidates are looking for is, hey, is this a possibility? Or, you know, I'm working, not even making 40,000. I know it's not going to be like, I'm not going to make a like quote unquote bank, but like, are there other things that I can get from, you know, what else can I get from Monarch? And the biggest thing is, you know, telling them some of the benefits, you know, how our managers manage, how involved HR is in making sure that our new hires or candidates feel successful before they even start with us. So again, those tools are really, really important, and that professional development and training. And we have a week training with our therapists just to ensure that they feel prepared before they even start.
Well, Katie, it was just like she was an undergrad, and now this is a grown professional lady. I think the thing for all y'all who have watched our webinars every single month or more than once a month, like, Adam got all these students all over the place. But really, I was thinking the other day, it starts by investing in them, right? So Kirsten, yeah, she was in the front desk at the Penthouse Student Success Center at the University of Akron when we built it, but she wasn't just a student. She was poured into and challenged and given opportunity. And she didn't have a choice. You ain't just gonna punch in here and sit on your cell phone, okay? You are learning how to be a professional. Same thing with Miss Katie, who was a GA who spun over from a different program, and she was given leadership opportunities. And I would sit with her as the VP, and we would do these conversations and build those relationships. And I think where our miss sometimes is as Gen Xers is we think that younger professionals solely want professional development for advancement opportunities. They want professional development for belonging opportunities. Does that make sense? See, Katie will always belong with me. Same thing, that's why they're here, okay? I'll call them tomorrow because it started then that we watered their roots deep and we watered them wide, and we did it intentionally. And so then it's like, okay. And it was hard. Katie, I'm gonna pick on you. It was hard when we left each other. You were expecting that same deep and wide root intentionality from everybody else. And the truth was you weren't getting it until where you are now. So talk a little bit about the same thing we talked about, how upskilling in particular builds morale and retention. Then also talk about a little bit about your work at Tech Elevator, because one of the things you and I were talking about, how Tech Elevator does a lot of upskilling, but also does a whole bunch of reskilling with people, like you said, Uber drivers who want to learn a whole new industry. But there's a piece of it that you and your coaches and your educators do, because you have to instill lifelong learning in them, where it isn't just about learning and getting their certificate, because they're in an industry that's changing. So how do you do that intentionally so that they're always looking to upskill and learn more so that their skills don't become obsolete? Big question.
Yes, thank you, Adam. So I'll start with kind of my experience. I think in a way, working with Adam was a blessing and a curse, because to have worked with someone who does pour into you in that way, you know what you want and you know what you need. And so when you go out into the world and you don't find that, it can be very kind of disappointing. So kind of looking back on my own experiences, I had kind of fallen into these positions where I was not given the capacity to be at the table and even if I don't need to be leading, but just to be learning and to be there and to be present and be with my peers. That was how I had started my professional experience with Adam. I would be in these meetings that I would never in any other way have intended on being present, but there I was. Katie Schrader was in the room, and so it really felt like belonging to me, and kind of seeing the growth of what I've wanted out of a job. I've also learned that I want somewhere where upskilling, reskilling is part of the culture. So you see that in the leaders. It's one thing to say, we have this benefit, it's here for you, use it. But then it's another thing to see my supervisor actually doing that and her leaving at 2 o'clock to go to a class and come on back. So to have that level of leadership be demonstrated is really empowering as well. In addition to that, I think a lot of folks recognize that you're gonna lose someone either way if you don't upskill or reskill them. So why not do that? I think sometimes there's a misconception that folks are worried, well, if I teach them this, they're gonna leave. When the fact is they're gonna leave anyway. They're gonna go, because if they wanna go, they're gonna leave. And so why not educate someone? Why not skill someone? Why not pour into that person so that they don't want to leave, and they might be in a different capacity at your organization, but they're still there.
Well, Katie, let me just interrupt you real quick, because you just hitting on some gold here, sister. Okay, so it's one thing when people leave. Sometimes you know the world now. Okay, I'm not my mom who worked at the same place for 37 years, right? Gen Xers bounced around. Okay, our kids, they do some bouncing. Okay, and that's okay. Okay, so sometimes you want to leave, sometimes you have to leave, sometimes it's time to go, whether it's the role or the space or whatever. The question is that person out talking about how that was a great place to work? Because that place, they belonged there. But I left because I wanted to be closer to family, or I left because whatever could be happening. I had a sick parent or whatever it is. The reality is this is all about recruiting top talent. I never want anybody to leave an organization I work for and not say to their friends, you need to go work for that guy. All right. I mean, that's how I got Laron. Like, I had two people I trusted more deeply than almost anybody in my life professionally say, Laron needs to work with you, Adam. I was like, oh, they didn't even know they were talking to each other. That, and neither one of them worked for me, well, one did currently. So those are the kind of things, Miss Katie, that you're saying that I think are really poignant, right? Because what we often think as Gen Xers and Boomers, well, I'm going to spend all this money and upskill you, and then you're going to leave. But you're going to leave and tell 15 people, oh man, that was the greatest experience ever. I promise you, when I send a job to Katie that we're hiring in Kentucky, she is a great recruiter for me. Okay. Hey, if you want to go somewhere, come to Kentucky. Adam's down there, right? I mean, that's how it works. Yeah. So I think seeing those connections and that relationship building as something that people have whole lives, and sometimes people have to leave. But that doesn't mean they're leaving and not being an evangelist for you as a place where other young professionals in particular can get that same kind of seat at the table and disruptive upskilling in that way. Katie, I interrupted you. I know you wanted to talk about the work at Tech Elevator, in particular around reskilling people, upskilling people, then also this instilling, right? Because you're instilling lifelong learning in your students, right? Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned, Tech Elevator, we are a coding boot camp, so a short-term educational experience. It's really dense in content. Students, they graduate, and really what we are kind of selling to the students, what we're selling to our hiring partners that we work with are, we have developed someone and we have given you someone who knows how to be a developer. So we're not even promising this is like the best entry-level developer you're going to get. We've given you someone who's willing to learn. We've given you someone who in 14 weeks gave it their all and learned something completely, learned a new language, a literal new language. And so that is kind of how we're able to have those conversations with employers to even consider like hiring some of our students at times. Is there is a difference between hiring someone who is a butt in a seat and wants it for just the paycheck versus someone who's going to come in and be eager and be hungry and work every day to grow. But then it's also, if we are selling this to the employers that way, the employers do have to follow up, because you will see folks that stay somewhere for a year and leave, and it's because they don't have that support or that follow through or that development. So they came from this experience where everyone was supporting you, everyone was in your life in every aspect, everyone was trying to uplift you, to somewhere where it was kind of like, figure it out, and you kind of fall short. So there's definitely, I see when students come in that is part of what they want. They don't just want somewhere where they're coming in, they're checking in on their time card and they're leaving. They want somewhere where they can develop, and there's this intermingling, which we've kind of like touched on a little bit, of just you are more than just, I am more than just a pathway director development lead. I am Katie Schrader. I am, you know, a sister, I am a wife, I am what have you. And so also making sure that we are considering all of those forms of an individual when they show up in the workspace. I don't know if I answered your question very well.
No, you did really well. The wife part still has me shook a little bit, but I'm getting there. You know, Tom, solid. So I'm getting there. So I think what Katie's saying is spot on, right? The challenge with, and Lauren, I want you to talk about this real quick, because your work is this. So there's part of your work that is advising, and you're still working with students every day, but then we built your position to be the coach on the field. You know, I think of everything in football terms, being a former football player, and a former football coach, and I used to come home from practice sore when I was a coach. And my wife would be, "What, are you okay?" I mean, you aren't, people think the coach just twirls the whistle. No, the coach is going through the drill 10 times to show the player how to do it right. Oh, here's your hand position. No, you're not leaning this right way. No, you're not doing that. So Laurent's role is really that shoulder to shoulder, not, yes, facilitating one-time PD days and training academies and leadership institutes and all the things that we do in our advising cadre at Kentucky, but then it's that shoulder to shoulder teaching and workshopping with people that's so, so different and so important. I think one of the things that in education, and I'll just pick on higher ed, we're never going to be a place that's an SEC school or a Big Ten school, Ohio State, us. We're never going to have people working remote because we sell the experience to our students, right? That's what we sell. And we can't say, oh, the experience, but all the people aren't here, right? But come live in our residence halls. That's not going to be what we are. Now, yes, we'll have round the clock multimodal services for multimodal students. We'll get there, but we'll never be an online institution, right? How we can compete with those places that can let folks sit at home and advise from their comfy pants in their living room is through robust development and creating that sense of belonging. There is nothing like this week on a college campus. We started classes on Monday. I told Laurent it's like fresh cut grass. It's the best day. It's so exciting. You know, this new students, because it's all new. We got 6,106 brand new people in lives. That's exciting. But even that isn't enough for a lot of young people when you're competing with, oh, I can work from home and do this ed tech stuff, right? But what we can offer is that belonging. And what's registering, what I'm hearing from Katie and from Laurent and from Kirsten, is that belonging comes from pouring into people in really systemic ways that you operationalize, but also things that are more mentoring shoulder to shoulder work that leaders are doing. Yeah, people would say, why is Katie sitting here? She's just a GA. She's sitting here because she's a student. First off, she's mine, so she's here. And Katie would say what anything the VPs would say, because we didn't know. And that was not only critical for us and what we were doing, it was critical for Katie. Same way with Kirsten, she's an undergrad and was making decisions and triaging students as they were coming in the door. So Laurent, talk a little bit about your work, right? And how that professional development, how you see it, right? Because you're helping to craft this vision. Nobody else has really done the kind of work you are doing at UK, being that person out there doing professional development shoulder to shoulder with people. How is that being received? And what are some of the considerations if people want to do it? Because you're there all the time, that folks, because you have to be mindful of people's generations, you also have to be mindful that employees don't want to feel like, we talked about this the other day, when you come to a new organization, people act like you're a brand new professional and you don't know anything. And part of our goal in recruiting diverse talent is to take diverse ideas and to build that tapestry. So how are you balancing that? How are you visioning that out? And how do you feel like your work is the kind of thing that builds that morale and that belonging in an intentional way?
Yeah, so the work that we're doing here at the University of Kentucky, really transformation on it, taking from Adam's vision when he brought me on, kind of sold me into the mission of what we're trying to do. And so like on the surface level, the work that I'm doing, kind of just a quick background of our structure, we have 12 different colleges on campus that do advising in their college. And we wanted to make sure that students are getting a complete experience no matter where they're at. So Adam's position is a hybrid where he's got a dual report with the directors of advising in each one of the colleges. And so what this role is doing, my work is providing professional development, someone who is focusing on the advisor community as a whole, someone that's paid. So we have an advising network that kind of does stuff, but my position is someone paid by the university in the advising community to make sure that the advisors have what they need. So on the surface, on the outline of what that looks like is, we've created, and done some best practice research of how do we do continued training, because it's not just about, going to a conference and learning new cool stuff or even doing one-off things on your campus. It's about how are we continuing to be better at our job as part of professional development. And so we have created these new programs, these 5 new programs that when employees start from where they start, the advisor training academy, and then they go through, and even for folks that have been here, entering the mentor and the advanced advisor training academy and different things like that. So those are semester annual programs that we are building and doing, and we're also doing one-off things, professional development that you would have. So that's kind of on the surface of what I'm doing and going around in the different colleges, building those relationships. But really the key, and what I learned from Adam, is that really what we're doing is we're building culture. We're trying to build a culture in each college where the advisors grow off of each other. We're a huge campus and every individual is bringing in certain talents. And what we want to do is we want to build a culture where we're training each other. And each person, it's like a mini conference going on here at EKU or at University of Kentucky and in all of the different colleges. So I'll give you an example. I had one of the advisors, because I'm in the College of Business and Economics, and I had an advisor come in, and some of it starts with praise. So you want to make sure that you're acknowledging the work that you're doing or that the other people are doing. So I had an advisor come in and really break down how you calculate GPA. And I was like, bro, I don't know if you realize this, but I'd say less than half advisors on campus, maybe less than 25%, can break down all the quality points and everything and how you just did. Like, that's amazing. Like, I'm glad that you shared that with me. Continue to share that, which, and it starts there. And then, okay, then he goes and he's like, well, hey, I shared information with someone and they liked it. And it made me feel good that I was able to impart something on someone else. And so then I'm going to continue to do that. When we're in spaces where we are creating spaces where advisors from different departments are coming together, and then in that space we're encouraging the people who are experts at a certain thing to teach the others. And so really what we've done, we've provided a plan of how you can develop and then we created a space of where it's happening. So this is what we're going to do, this is where we're going to do it, and how we're going to do it. And then you build the culture. You go in and once you do that, people get excited about what you're doing. They get excited about opportunities of space where they can go, 1, they can learn something, and 2, if they have some expertise, if they learn something really cool, they know I'm going to be able to share it and it's going to help others. And I think that when you talk about building that culture, and for those of you who are wondering, like, okay, how can I start to do this on my campus? It really starts there. You have to have this vision of what is the culture I want? Then I need to put in a structure. We got to have some means of that's getting people thinking about something and getting them to a place. And then once you start with the mission, the kind of the why. I can't remember the guy that did the TED Talk, his name, but start with why. But you start with that vision and the culture that you want to build, and then you kind of work your way out from there with the structure and the different pieces.
Ron, you made it sound better than it really is. But and that stuff is hard, y'all. That's hard to measure when you're changing culture. I mean, where I work has been here since 1865. Okay, and it isn't. All of us who work in higher education, it doesn't matter if it's Kentucky or it's we got somebody from Puerto Rico on here. We've all been at different institutions. They're all the same. Colors change, maybe words and prefixes change, fight songs and traditions change, but Ohio State ain't that different from Kentucky, okay? It's either red or blue, kind of the same. The question is, how do you, and part of what happens is change people come and they force change on people down, and change happens. Katie, we made dramatic change at Akron, okay? Dramatic, but it was forced. And people didn't feel empowered. They didn't feel it was their change, right? Because we're also eager and passionate about the work. The difference is trying to get people to move chess pieces with their hand rather than you coming in moving them for them, right? And doing that with your team members, which is harder. And one of the reasons why Laron's position, picture an evangelist out in the field. So Laron is centrally funded, but he's out in the field. And so he's there to teach and to show and to amplify and to say, hey, you know what? What Bethany just did is amazing. Bethany, could you show everybody else how you did that? Because not only are we silos between departments on whether it's a campus or at a company, right? We're silos in each other. We're all just doing our work, right? In a cubicle. And there's the best work in our industry in particular is when people are workshopping every day with each other. At Akron, we had a conference room that we called the Millennium Falcon. That's how crazy I am. And when anything would be cool that people were always walking around and learning from each other and teaching each other. My job was to say, hey, did you just see what so-and-so did? Hey, let's all get in the Falcon and let me show you this. That was amazing how you did questioning with this student, or how you did notes was crazy. And before you know it, the culture changes. Then everybody's teaching and training each other, right? And walking into each other's offices and asking questions and getting feedback. Those things are really, really important. So Laron, thank you for that. Kirsten, I wanted to pivot back to you because you're really in a unique spot, right? You have these HR roots, you're doing recruitment, but you're doing recruitment in a nonprofit space. So you're already getting people who are purpose-driven, right? They're not coming to sell cars, they're coming to change lives. And so how you've worked in places that are for-profit, you worked in places that are nonprofit. Right now, and your real mission and ministry is all around health and wellness, mental health, mental wellness, right? So how has that shifted, especially as you're seeing? So contrast the nonprofit idea of professional development, upskilling people, and what people that are coming there are looking for with when you've worked in other companies. Does that make sense?
Yes. So just as far as, the biggest thing for this company, I've worked in 2 nonprofits in the past 2 years, and both operating in the same mental health space. And so I think the biggest thing is, especially for Monarch right now, is, COVID happened. We have monkeypox now. We have, COVID it was a mess. And so right now, our biggest thing is, checking in with our candidates, and then, even on the flip side of just us as the professionals that are coming in and trying to find talent, is our team leads or our managers coming in and checking in on us. How's your mental health today? And that is something where it's like, wow, you care like that. And that's just so interesting because you don't see that. I've never seen that in my professional career until I came and worked in the nonprofit, the mental health, healthcare side, because, we have people that are coming in and taking care of people that have had COVID. We're having people that, they had a breakdown because of COVID, they lost their job, so they had to check into one of our facilities. And so that is something that you don't see in a professional setting or corporate America as much as you would see, working in a mental health. So for me, just looking back at like my professional career, corporate America, you have people where it's just like, hey, we've got to get this done. This is it. Do your job and go home. So I think that's the biggest thing, is just coming into a place where somebody actually cares about you as an individual, like a Katie Schrader, and that is something that you don't really see often. I think that there's a lot of individuals that have come in that are part of the generation before us that are really like, man, I really have to be more, cognizant of the things that I say, the things that I do, and how I treat my employees. And so that's something that I'm really appreciative of, having managers like that now.
It's really good. One of the things that Ms. Cheryl asked about, Ms. Cheryl, thank you so much for the question about assessment and feedback. Katie, we'll give you and Kirsten some time to think about, how do you assess, right? So how are we assessing upskilling and reskilling with the team members, Katie, in your case, with your students, then also the employers that y'all are working with. So think about that. Laron, I was going to kind of unpack with you. So how we at UK, so we have this really unique model of advising. So we aren't centralized, we aren't decentralized, we're partnership. It's what attracted me to the job. I think partnership with the academy and the people whose academic and life's work is retaining and supporting students to degree is critical. And what happens is those people kind of dance around the dragons in hopes the dragon doesn't wake up, right? And this is really partnership. So it requires, because how faculty members view higher education is very different. It's a whole different universe. It's like they work at a different place than all of us that are staff. It's just different. It's not bad, it's not good, it's just different. But both are so critical, right? And so some people then will say, we gotta decentralize or we gotta centralize. Well, no, we have to dance together. That's what this does. And so our partnership, as Laron mentioned, we have a dual report. So the assistant deans or directors of advising in each of the 12 colleges report 51% to me, 49% to their respective dean in their college. And 51 doesn't mean a lot, as Joe and Kamala, Kay, don't mean a lot, can't get much done. But it creates skin in the game, and it creates relationship and partnership. And so our goal is to continue to have the uniqueness of each college, nursing and design and fine arts and all of these things, to have those unique differences, right? And not have the same advising, but have the same foundational practices, right? And development across the enterprise, even knowing now that what we knew about students 3 years ago, we can throw it all out because there's no data, there's no nothing. Who these students are completely different. We have to upskill and essentially reskill an entire industry, right? Because this is all new. Nobody's seen these students before. There's nothing. And so part of what we did is we spent more than a year not only gathering best practice from other institutions, we just did nothing but have coffee talks and have right community gatherings and take people to national conferences, but have them give feedback on the bus, on online forums, and there were two things that the community said that they wanted. Two themes that were the biggest, and it wasn't work from home. The two biggest themes were, we want chances to build community, and not just build community around professional things. We want chances to build community with each other. We want chances to build community across college, across department. We want chances to fellowship. We also want chances to learn and teach each other. One. And then 1B was, we want robust professional development. And so that's when we said, okay, we got to take this on. And as we built the 5 cornerstone bricks on our PD program, one of the things that we did is we built the whole thing, and Laron knows. Then at some point in March, and it was about May, Laron, we said, whoa, we can't just put it on people. We have to give them an opportunity to help build it with us. And so we have whole curriculums for blocks 2 and 3 that we are not using. We're going to let our 2-year-long leadership development academy, like a leadership grader, but it's all about advising leadership. We're going to let them develop those pieces. So we have an infrastructure and a framework. We're going to let them do that. So part of the way, Laurent, talk a little bit about also how we're doing or you're doing or best practices around assessment of professional development in really robust ways, and things that we're doing that are simple and things that are a little more complex.
I'll mention a couple things quickly, and Katie and Kirsten can drop in. Getting them in different formats. So people like to give feedback in different ways. I know, I'm an external processor. So as something's happening, I want to sit down and I just want to talk about the things that are in my head. And so having spaces for that is important. Our coffee chats, our community gatherings, those are places where we said, hey, we'll provide coffee, or we'll provide food, and we just want you to sit down, and we gave them some prompts. We don't want to steer the conversation as much as in like a town hall, or like, hey, here are the topics, it's really serious. It's more of, here's a couple of prompts. Now I'm going to float around to the tables. I'm going to listen to what's the real conversation going. It's like, yeah, here are the prompts, but what are y'all really saying and how are you really feeling? So providing space like that, like that's how we're doing some assessment. And then using a Qualtrics form easy, like, hey, scan this on your phone as you're leaving. I want you to kind of put down the most 2 important things that you and your table or your group talked about or that you want to see. And so we provided ways that way. Sending out surveys. Some people like to just, give me a whole bunch of list of topics or things, and let me sit down and think about it and then write out, legit responses. So that is some people's vibe. They don't want to sit in a group and they want to go back and they want to think about it and they want to develop their response. So we did that. Those are our 2 biggest ways to engage that, and then doing pilots and getting feedback. So starting small scale, not just we're going to release this and let it run and do it on a big scale, but doing small little spurts and doing little pilots, and then seeing how this part of the community reacts to it and goes. So I'll let Katie and Kirsten jump in.
No, Laurent, that's really good. One thing to add there that I think is really important is making sure you have the data, right? All of us that are in advising student success world, we freak out when people say assessment. Well, the customer satisfaction survey, students aren't going to be satisfied all the time because we have to tell them things they don't want to hear, and that's part of our job, right? But we need to not be afraid of running the film, right? How can I do better? One of the things Laurent did brilliantly as we kicked off this fall is we had an event, all the advisors, a celebration, and got them just visioning around what a Wildcat advisor is. And they created what they are. So then our job then is, before any event, any activity, any meeting on campus, reading a couple of those things and saying, okay, this is who we are. So if anything else gets in here and it's distracting us from who we want to be, we got to come back. We got to come back to that. And we also should not be afraid of then saying, are our students believing we are who we say we are? That's the kind of assessment we want, right? We want that feedback, because if it isn't happening, then I need to tweak it, right? And that's not being done to preside. We never want our folks looking over their shoulder. We want them to be able to break a few eggs to save some lives. And so you have to do that. But at the same time, as a practitioner, you should be fine with, give me feedback, right? Do you know I care about you? Do you know I'm honest with you? Those are the kind of things that are really important. Katie, talk a little bit about Tech Elevator. You all are huge tech, all the pieces. Talk about how you do assessment in really different ways.
So it's been really interesting, because even though we do similar to like satisfaction surveys or whatnot of our staff at Tech Elevator, what I love that we really put a lot of energy into is doing some qualitative kind of research. And by doing that, we have what we call cohortly conversations. And this is kind of like one of the best ways I would say that we measure how our staff are upskilling and reskilling. So we have 3 cohorts a year. So similar to how, semesters, you have several semesters a year. And so at the end of each one of those, having a conversation, and it's not a like annual conversation of like, here's what you did well, here's what you did wrong. It is a professional, like the professional themselves is leading the conversation to their leader, to their supervisor of, here is what I did, here is what I learned, here is where I grew, and here is where I want to grow, and then setting that game plan for that next meeting. So it's really cool because I have 3 touch points a year where I have set a goal and then I get a check to see, did I meet this goal? Did I learn this skill? Did I get to meet so-and-so? Did I get to sit in X meeting? And I'm able to measure it in that way. So it's because we're talking about, you know, making sure that upskilling and reskilling isn't just showing up to a panel or going to a conference. It's more developmental than that. I like that we kind of have this format because it's able to be more, you're able to hold people more accountable to like the depth in which they are learning and they are growing. I hope that.
No, it does. It's going to make me ask Ms. Isaac a different question. So, because I was thinking, and I think Ms. Cheryl, and I think we kicked that thing around enough about how are we assessing if we're doing it, if we're hitting it. The question is, Kirsten, how do you assess for yourself, right? You and I talked about your goals, right? Your professional goals. How are you assessing, you know, am I doing the upskilling? Am I doing the things that I need to do professional development wise? You talked about being proactive, right? Learning that you can't just sit back. You got to say to somebody, hey, can I do this? Hey, I have this idea. Hey, how are you creating accountability and assessing so that it isn't 6 months later and you've not moved forward, right? How are you doing that? And then how can an employer help you with that? Does that make sense?
Yes. So I think for me, just as a professional, my biggest thing is having a checklist of the things that I want to do and how long. So that's, you know, for me, I would love to get, my goal is to get within the next 6 months to start studying for my professional license in human resources. And so, you know, continually checking in, how am I doing with that? Is it still something that I want to do? So going ahead and looking at my journal that I do keep, and just seeing the things that I want. So checking in with myself and what the goals that I already set out for myself, and checking in and say, have I done this? And I think for as employers is not being scared to have that conversation. Hey, do you guys pay for, you know, licensures? Is that something that we could look into? Has anybody asked that question before? Because in my experience with, you know, Monarch, we do a monthly check-in, which is called a round robin. We do that with our director of talent acquisitions and then my team lead. And so, you know, asking those questions of, hey, is this something that we have the ability to do? Can we go to different recruitment events and get different ways to be proactive as recruiters? So asking those tough questions and, you know, having that on the forefront of their minds. And as employers, I think it's just really, what is everything working for you? What is working for your job and what is not? And just leaving that open-ended question, and at least maybe, you know, if you're doing a one-on-one, I think the best thing for me that works for me, and from what I see with my team, is preparing for that meeting, for that one-on-one. So saying, this is what we're going to talk about in this one-to-one. I want you to come prepared with answers for this. What is working your job? What is not? What can I do to make your job a little bit easier? Is your workload, you know, difficult? How are you managing it? Would you like more work? You know, just asking those questions and letting the employee be prepared for to have those answers for you, I think is very beneficial.
Yeah, I think that's great. Lisa, can you reshare the slides for our participants? One of the things I think that Kirsten talked about so well is the importance of checking back, those round robins, those meetings, those accountability conversations, not just about your work, but how's your life? Katie, how the cats, right? Ron, you know, my guy went to kindergarten this year. How's it going, right? Those are the kind of conversations that are important. How are you as a human being, which is different than, are you doing your job? How can I support you more in your job? That's very different. And those are the pieces that we all, especially old guys like me who have been doing this a long time, who defined myself by my job for so long, having the kind of coaches in my life that could remind me how to provide those kind of robust, but also those coaching and mentoring opportunities for young professionals. You know, we can't throw up our hands and say, no one wants to apply. What is wrong with these millennials, right? The millennials had it all figured out, y'all. Did y'all know that? All it took was the world to burn. And we realized work just isn't that doggone important. So the question is, how do we now adapt? Not ask them to adapt, because they're the ones that knew it. They were the canary in the coal mine that said, I'm not going to work like my parents worked. My life isn't this job. And if the job isn't fulfilling me emotionally, physically, taking care of my wellness, my well-being, then I'm going to pivot, right? And we just thought, well, millennials just wanted everything to be easy. No, they just were prioritizing and putting healthy priorities on things. So the one thing I always love to do with y'all is bring you people, and part of my upskilling and reskilling of Miss Katie, Miss Kirsten, and Mr. Laurent is to say they will free themselves up to coach you. You know, what their job is this, what their work is something different. So there's a lot of people that say they do executive coaching. These young people do younger professionals do quality and can provide you quality mentoring to kind of keep you thinking about these things. So here's their contact information. The other piece I wanted to leave y'all with is this concept that Ms. Isaac was talking about, that when you say to somebody, do you offer this, right, at a company? Don't come back to your team member with, well, we haven't, and it wouldn't be fair. First thing somebody's going to hear is fair. Well, fair means treating everybody differently. Fair doesn't mean giving everyone the same. That's called easy, right? Fair is saying, oh, if this is what you need, we'll provide that to you, right? There's always has to be somebody who's first. So when your mind says fair, the same to everybody, immediately pivot that and say, no, when things are fair, there has to be somebody who goes first. And so when a young professional brings up, do we pay for licenses and certifications? Well, I can't do that because that wouldn't be fair. No, what would be fair is treating everybody as individuals, right? That's the kind of equity and justice and inclusion that people are looking for. And so when those ideas are thrown out, being willing to receive them and be that yes person, right? Can't be yes or no and then be upset that you're losing people, because that's costing all of us time, energy, money, and resources. And the people you lose are always the most talented. I always say, talent leaves, turds stay, right? I learned that from a football coach, Schrader. Talents leave, turds stay. And we want to make sure that we keep our most talented, because talented know their worth and they will kick the dust off their sandals, which is very different from other people who just live maybe more in fear. Laurent has been at a bunch of schools. He looks like he's 18, but he's lived a whole rich life and run a whole bunch of stuff and been willing to pivot to be able to provide more opportunities for himself, for his family, and then knowing his ministry on serving an entire campus and the impact he can make. So those are the kind of things that are critical. Thank you all so much for joining us today. Our panelists, y'all are amazing as usual. I appreciate your voices, you taking the time out of the busy day. Everyone else, thank you. Thank you to InfoBase for always being such an amazing partner and kind of getting out of the way and letting folks say crazy stuff like whatever, and really be the kind of thought leaders that people are looking for. Finally, we have another conversation coming up on September 1st, and it's a really crazy, challenging title and topic, where we're going to have some national higher ed leaders talking about breaking down silos on campus. How to break down silos and build coalitions and real meaningful partnerships. So I hope y'all look for that. Please continue to take care of yourself, take care of each other. Peace.